As we launch this campaign for president, you deserve to know where I came from. My experience as a child, living in a family that struggled economically, powerfully influenced my life and my values. I know where I came from.
Senator Bernie Sanders from Vermont, but that Brooklyn is thick in his voice, and of course it was on display yesterday as he announced his presidential campaign. Our panel is here with us. Governor, let me start with you. There's obviously a very conscious effort to show more of the story of Bernie Sanders here and who he is and not just the policies he stands for. Was that what was lacking in 2016? Is it working so far?
Well, I certainly think it was a smart move yesterday because I think in this age of craving for authenticity, people showing where they came from, especially if they've overcome something, if there's a challenge, and then they link their policies to it, it makes perfect sense. So I think it was a really smart move. Otherwise, you don't want to just hear the same old policies again. You have to understand what drives somebody.
And he's also emphasizing his commitment to the civil rights movement way back in the 60s when he was at the University of Chicago. He was criticized last time for not connecting effectively with the African-American community. Is this part of what he needs to do to get the nomination? I know you're not necessarily rooting for him to get the nomination.
I think that Bernie Sanders has a long way to go, and there's a certain part of me that believes that ship is already sailed. I mean, it's not the fact that Bernie Sanders marched with Dr. King in the 60s. I think that was one of the first things that he said. The question was, where have you been and what have you done since then? Where has your activism been since the 60s? And show me the legislation you've done as a mayor of Burlington, or why you've been in the United States House or the United States Senate to positively affect change in the African American community. And he wasn't able to articulate that answer. A lot of the success Bernie Sanders had was the fact that he was the anti-Hillary Clinton at the time. And he was a home for people who had a problem with Hillary Clinton. Now the field is vast. There are other people in this quote-unquote progressive lane, and I think that Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, Beto, Biden, and Sherrod Brown and a few others are really out there running magnificent campaigns. And Bernie Sanders' voice, which has had a huge impact on our policies, is one that's going to be loud and resonate.
Every time I see Bernie Sanders and the traction that he's getting, I just think of him as the Ron Paul of the left. He is a protest candidate, a septuagenarian who speaks fondly of revolution and has traditionally operated outside the party structures. That said, he's doing pretty well in the polls.
He's ahead.
And
in some.
Democrats have a huge opportunity to pick up skeptical Republicans. But if they latch onto someone who self-identifies as a socialist, that is going to drive Republicans back into the arms of Trump, especially when the platform has, a $82 trillion tag on the Green New Deal, $32 trillion for Medicare for all. I mean, these are ideas that are popular with a certain segment of his base, but not.
I know you want to bash socialism, but before
not bashing socialism. I'm just going to say that to that point, right?
Yeah.
If you look at the 40 members of the House that were elected, Democrats that were elected from the House, 33 of those members are New Dems, centrist New Dems. So you have AOC, Bernie, all these progressives in the party pulling the party to the left pretty strongly. And then you have these 40 people who were elected, 33 of them, New Dem centrists. And you see this past week, there's a tug of war in the House between AOC. I'm going to put you on the list if you don't vote for these progressive things. We're going to bash it. There's going to be a real battle in the Democratic Party for where the soul is of the party.
Let's just say that 284 people identify as Democrats or caucus with the Democrats in Congress. 282 identify as Democratic Socialists.
But all the candidates, interestingly, all the candidates are running.
With you is what I'm telling you. Don't need to argue with me.
Because I think that a lot of people they just fail to remember as Republicans try to cause this divide, that Hillary Clinton did win by 4 million votes. This was not a close race.
But okay.
But that's not how the game's played. That's how the game's played.
But one of the points that you were bringing up when we talk about policy is, yes, Bernie and AOC and a lot of my progressive colleagues, those people on the left, are talking about these grand ideas. But the party that's okay to talk about how we're going to insure people and how we're going to fix climate change. Yeah. Nothing's wrong with that.
Bernie Sanders, I believe at the next presidential election will be, correct me if I'm wrong, 77 years old or thereabouts. There's a brand new NBC Wall Street Journal poll out this morning. Among all voters, how comfortable are you with a candidate being over 75 years old? 37% say that they are enthusiastic or comfortable. 62% of those polled say They have reservations about a candidate that old or very uncomfortable. Now, only 2 candidates that I know of fit the category of will be over 75 at the time of the next presidential election.
Trump's pretty close.
He's close, but he's not there. Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. Now, I recognize that there's an ageist quality to all of this, but what do you
Are
think
you
of it?
asking me for a reason?
I'm asking you because you're a former governor to my right.
I'm totally kidding you. Yeah, I mean, I think
Dave's
that
the old man at the table.
if you asked people who are over 70 whether they're comfortable, my guess is they would be uncomfortable. So you have to look
79, I'm told in my ear. 70. Bernie will be 79.
Yeah, I mean, that's getting up there. And so the question is, how are these individuals, how are they? Are they sharp? I was talking with somebody who's close to the Biden team this week, because if he does jump in, I mean, I think he's got a huge amount to offer. And
he'll be 78.
Right. And I said, how is he doing? And they said, the guy is exercising, he's sharp, he's not slowing down.
But that's not who motivates the base, right?
But
That's
I don't
not
want
who-
to. I want to run for office again,
Yeah.
so I'm not going to dare say that we shouldn't have. I'm not going to be ageist. I'm not going to walk down that path. I will say though that Joe Biden's biggest problems are not his age. Joe Biden's biggest problem is what he's going to have to do one day is look into a camera and apologize to Anita Hill, and he's going to have to address the 94 crime bill. He has substantive policy issues that he's going to have to address. Being 78, 79 is not at the top of the list.
So one other thing that happened with Joe Biden this week was really interesting. He called Mike Pence, the vice president, a decent guy.
God forbid.
Kind of just a throwaway line when he was talking about the Munich conference. Progressive activist Cynthia Nixon, who ran for governor and lost in the primary to Governor Cuomo, tweeted, "Joe Biden, you've just called America's most anti-LGBT elected leader a decent guy. Please consider how this falls on the ears of our community." She subsequently wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post. Biden responded, "You're right, Cynthia. I was making a point in a foreign policy context that under normal circumstances a vice president wouldn't be given a silent reaction on the world stage, but there is nothing decent about being anti-LGBTQ rights, and that includes the vice president."
Can I just put a stake in the ground for graciousness? I mean, Joe Biden wasn't saying that his policies were decent. He was saying that he was a decent human being. Joe Biden was ahead of Obama on LGBT issues. So
much to Obama's chagrin, yes.
Yeah, at the time, yeah. But I mean, my point is that Joe Biden, who is just a good human being, let people be decent. Let people be gracious. You don't have to. I mean, I disagree with you on almost everything. I'd say you're a decent guy. My dad's a Republican. And
Your dad's a Republican?
My dad is a Republican, and he is such a decent
But Biden did
being.
cave and kind of say he is indecent. And this is the problem. When you say someone is indecent, you are disqualifying them from the conversation. You're saying, I wouldn't even talk to you about your position on gay marriage. And when the conversation stops, that's when we get so polarized. So
but as
the
Democrats,
Democrats go down this route.
No, we
you are
have to do a
shutting
better
out
job.
all Mike Pence's voters.
I agree with that. And I'm not. It's not necessarily about Mike Pence's voters or anything else, but it's about basic humanity. I mean, wait till people find out that I actually consider myself friends with Strom Thurmond's son.
What?
Both of them. I mean, I actually served with Paul Thurmond.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's South Carolina politics. It's okay to say that people are decent human beings and wholeheartedly disagree with their politics. I don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
In fact, I like David and Amanda.
And I would hope that the
Thank
president.
you, Kari.
I would hope the president would take that issue.
Well, let me ask you just briefly, David, because the president yesterday said that there are members of Congress who hate America. I mean,
Listen, this is a red meat speech for the base at CPAC, right? This is a campaign event.
But that was not a
policy
decent thing
event.
to say.
No, it's not a decent event. I mean, I believe that everybody who serves in Congress, people who run for political office, love our country, regardless of your beliefs.
Of course they do.
You don't do it because you hate America. You do it because you love America.
Okay, that's 4 decent people at this panel. Thank you so much.
And 5. The host ain't bad.
Thank you. I wasn't going to include myself. I appreciate it. There's one thing Michael Cohen's not turning his back on, a potential movie deal, and that's the subject of this week's State of the Cartoonian.